On the 23rd of May 2014, a 22-year-old Elliot Rodger decided that it was finally time to enact his revenge, his retribution against women. In his Seville Road apartment, he awaited the return of his 2 roommates and a friend, all 3 of whom he systematically murdered by stabbing them all to death. Later, Elliot proceeded to simply grab a cup of coffee, sit in his car near his apartment, and upload the now infamous Retribution video to YouTube. His final vlog, in which he outlines the reasons for why he was about to carry out a mass shooting, also using his vehicle to injure bystanders. Elliot explains that his life has been very unfair to him, that he was a 22-year-old virgin. He complains of loneliness, how girls had never been attracted to him, and that he felt that this was an injustice, that he wanted to punish women for apparently throwing themselves at obnoxious brutes. He describes himself as the quote-unquote perfect gentleman, and explains that he's going to slaughter every stuck-up blonde female. He states that everyone will see the truth, that he is the true alpha male, the superior one. He goes on to complain about the popular kids living life in a hedonistic pleasure state, whilst he has to rot in loneliness. Elliot rambles on about how humans are disgusting, that he hates everyone, and that he will show no mercy after having been shown none himself. Retribution uploaded at 9:17 p.m. and at 9:18 p.m. he emailed his 141-page manifesto out to his parents, his therapist, teachers, even childhood friends. The manifesto detailed his life from start to finish, his childhood, upbringing, school life, friends, his feelings regarding women, his incredible jealousy, his searing hatred of blonde women in particular, and his plans to massacre a sorority, specifically Alpha Phi, which contained lots of beautiful blonde ladies who were allegedly the meanest and had rejected him the most. Blonde women were Elliot's main fetish, and he had previously stalked the sorority many times. Elliot, after having his coffee break, pulled up outside Alpha Phi planning to murder everyone inside the building, also planning to collect their heads in a bag to terrify the public with later on. The front door was locked, however, and despite knocking for several minutes, no one answered. So instead of carrying out his initial plan, Elliot Rodger spotted a few women nearby, killing 2 women and injuring 1. He then proceeded to get back into his car, driving down the street, stopping to fire his weapon into an unoccupied coffee shop. Moving on to a deli, carrying a drive-by shooting, Elliot fired into the store, killing 1 man. He then moved on, ramming several people with his car, shooting at multiple people, hitting some of them in the process. Elliot's erratic attacks attracted the attention of the police, prompting them to fire at his vehicle. 1 round even grazed Elliot's hip. During the chaos, Elliot eventually crashed his car into another, and he proceeded to shoot himself in the head, killing himself in the process. Elliot Rodger was what I imagine you would get if you had a young boy suffering and dealing with a type of autism, pervasive developmental disorder, a subset of the autistic spectrum, with 2 people, parents, who grew up probably quite poor and decided that when they were older, they would dote heavily on their child, so much so that that child would suffer massively for it as they developed and grew older. For a child with autistic traits, things like obsessive behavior, social awkwardness, and so on, which we'll be taking a look at later, who in their own home would have been treated very much like a king, to then step outside to then be treated very, very differently. Elliot attended private schools, so it's no wonder to me that as he grew up and found himself in public schools, he refers to them as degenerates. This is probably where his massively self-inflated ego came from, where his God complex came from, why he thought he was God's gift to women everywhere. And that's not me saying that people with autism will all go on to become mass shooters and terrible people. That's not me saying that everybody who had very, very privileged upbringings like Elliot would go on to do something like that as well. There are obviously other aspects to Elliot's story that pushed him as far as it did. A lack of identifying red flags, a lack of actual one-on-one parenting time, social awkwardness, bullying, and the lack of recognition of traits and serious red flags that led on to, 2014. The Santa Barbara shooting and the loss of 6 lives and the injury of 14. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Alex and welcome back to the Irate Alex channel. Welcome back to True IRL, the true crime series here on the channel. I am still relatively new to creating this kind of content, so I would please ask that you exercise a bit of patience with me, and if you have any honest criticism in how I deliver this, then please let me know down below in the comments section. So, Elliot Rodger, the man who would go on to gain infamy the world over and give a great deal of highlighting to the incel community and MGTOW, painting them all as radicalized extremist types. In fact, Elliot's actions would go on to inspire other horrific actions. This isn't a video that wants to look at things like gun control debates. It's not a video that really wants to highlight various different communities and paint them all as negative. And despite what I may say in this video, I am not sympathetic or empathetic towards Elliot Rodger or even his parents. In fact, at the age of 9, Elliot started therapy and would continue to do so until he was around the age of 18, 19, from that point forward, refusing any kind of medication because he thought that he knew better. But no, this is a video that looks to analyze the various flags throughout Elliot Rodgers' manifesto, to give my opinion on said red flags, and to kind of show you where his mindset developed from. To show you his contradictions, his perverse nature, and his self-corrupted mind. To show people what exactly was going on inside his head from a very early young age. And after we've gone through the manifesto, I'd like to take a look at some of the lesser known things about Elliot Rodger. For example, the fact that the man has stans in the current year. I'd also like to take a look at incel forums as well, to kind of weigh up where they stand on him as a hero type character, because the media did present him as this hero figure to the incel community. To talk about the concepts of red and black pilling, MGTOW, and then of course at the end pay homage to the victims by showing you some of the memorial footage and closing off from there. So let's get into it. Unfortunately, there isn't much in the way of a fully comprehensive timeline of Elliot Rodgers' life. And so we have to go off of his manifesto, quite possibly one of the most confusing, over-dramatized pieces of literature, if you can call it that, I have had the displeasure of reading. Elliot is somebody who paints a grandiose picture of his person and his life. More often than not, victimizes himself several hundred times. The manifesto is called My Twisted World. You see what I mean? The manifesto is 141 pages long with over 100,000 words, and it is littered with some of the most over-dramatized, hyperbolic language that you could really ever come across. It's also littered to the brim full of contradictions. The purpose of this part of the video is to go through various sections of the manifesto, highlighting how it is that he came to be. And we go into this, we walk together into the darkness, knowing full well that Elliot Rodger was a liar, and a very good liar at that, as told by his father. So let's get through this as quickly as we possibly can. Humanity. All of my suffering on this world has been at the hands of humanity, particularly women. It has made me realize just how brutal and twisted humanity is as a species. All I ever wanted was to fit in and live a happy life amongst humanity, but I was cast out and rejected, forced to endure an existence of loneliness and insignificance, all because the females of the human species were incapable of seeing value in me. I didn't want things to turn out this way, but humanity forced my hand. You see what I mean about the over-dramatization? You'd think that this boy had the worst life ever, but he was actually an incredibly privileged young man. He was initially born in the United Kingdom and came from a family of fairly significant wealth. His father was a photographer and would later go on to be a director, even being involved in movies like The Hunger Games. In fact, this clip that you can see here is Elliot Rodger stalking a very, very happy couple out on a beach in a black BMW that was purchased for him. And he talks of cruelty, and I want you to remember that. I want you to leave that in your mind, because later on, in his final years, his mind goes to truly dark and cruel places, based almost on nothing. Elliot Rodger was not rejected by women because he was ugly. Many people refer to him as an incel, but really, he doesn't quite fit the bill, truly. There's no political leaning, there's no red or black pilling behind it or anything of that nature. He just simply didn't approach women. He got it into his mind that women should just approach him. Do you remember what I said about the entitlement thing? Keep that in your mind as well. A great deal of his manifesto is very, very dry and not really worth me sifting through for this video, so that I have highlighted various parts of his life and writing. This is from the area of when he is between the ages of 0 to 5. At the age of 4, Elliot Rodger, had already been to 6 different countries. Who can claim that, eh? The United Kingdom, France, Spain, Greece, Malaysia, and the United States. Now you might think that was nothing, but if you look at the manifesto, a huge portion of it is him bragging about himself. Remember that everything that he is should be an attractive trait, and women should therefore thus approach him. Because Elliot Rodger thought he was better than everybody else. His childhood consisted of being sent to private school, traveling, and witnessing aspects of Hollywood and his father's behavior that he took on board and took so to heart that he thought that that was what you needed in order to have a happy, healthy relationship and subsequent life. Elliot Rodger refers to the first 5 years of his life as a very, very happy time, with family and friends being very much involved in his life. And the first real red flag that appears is between the ages of 5 and 9, with an interaction with a female, and this is where it started for him. This girl, who was my friend, Maddie Humphreys, would eventually come to represent everything I hate and despise, everything that is against me, and everything that I'm against. I'm playing innocently with this girl in the manner that all children play. We even took baths together. It was the only time in my life that I would see a girl my age naked. Now that's a pretty weird thing to say, isn't it? And there's no context there at all, really. Not entirely sure why Elliot Rodger was having a bath with another child that wasn't his sibling at the age of 5 is a bit bizarre to me, but then again, that's just me. But it is kind of odd that he brings that up as a kind of initial turning point for him, isn't it? At this stage, Elliot and his family have moved to America. Now remember when I said that he was incredibly spoiled by his family, and this would have a profound and massively detrimental effect on his psyche for the rest of his life. It's kind of odd how he would bring this up, to be honest with you, but this is one of the first examples of him really having a tantrum, really throwing his dolls out of the pram. He talks about visiting a theme park and being rejected for going on a ride. I saw other boys my age admitted onto the ride, but I was denied because I was too short. The ride that I was so excited to enjoy at the theme park was forbidden to me. I immediately fell into a crying tantrum, and my mother had to comfort me. This is very much a constant throughout his life, and would contribute to his own self-hatred, his own self-criticism towards his height and physical looks. And later at the age of 6, he would get his real first taste of video games. Now, of course, I am in no way suggesting that video games can make you violent or cause violence. That has been a theory that's been debunked multiple times. But it is important for the context here, as Elliot Rodger would go on to spend years just immersed in World of Warcraft and games like Halo. Of course, while playing these video games, my innocent, happy self knew nothing of the significant role video games would play during a large portion of my life, and the sanctuary that such games would eventually provide for me from the cruelties of this world. For now, they were just a form of entertainment like any other hobby. Now we move on to the age of 7. By this time, his parents are now divorced, and his father has, and in Elliot's own words, acquired a new girlfriend. It reads, "Because of my father's acquisition of a new girlfriend, my little mind got the impression that my father was a man that women found attractive, as he was able to find a new girlfriend in such a short period of time from divorcing my mother. I subconsciously held him in higher regard because of this. It is very interesting how this phenomenon works, that males who can easily find female mates garner more respect from their fellow men, even children." So Elliot Rodger is now 7 years old, and we have a good idea of where his mind began to perceive the world in a very, very different light to the average Joe. By this point, we already know that him being a spoiled, over-doted on child is already having an effect on his ability to process being told no for things, being able to process problem solving. Now, personally, at the age of 7, I do not believe for 1 second that Elliot Rodger could fully comprehend, even on his very, very basic level, when he carried out his detrimental and disgusting attack, of how relationships work, of how respect works. I do not believe that he looked to his father with a greater modicum of respect because he'd managed to acquire a new girlfriend. But this would remain very much a constant throughout his life. Quite literally everything that he speaks about is so shallow, so superficial, that it personally blows my mind. Now, although I haven't marked them down as any potential flags, I think it is worth bringing up that at the age of 8, he speaks very fondly of this particular year of his life. And it's worth noting for several reasons, because there is a great deal of interaction with friends and family throughout this period. This period of my life, aside from my early childhood in England, was one of the best periods. Life was fair and life was satisfying. As kids, proving our self-worth and gaining validation among our peers was achieved in a fair manner by how good we were at the games we played, or how big our collection of Pokemon cards were. No one had unfair advantages. This was perfect, and this is how life should be. And boy did I have a lot of fun. Of course, this does make me feel like that perhaps it actually wasn't fair, because, you know, he was quite the wealthy chap and was given pretty much everything that he wanted. I was quite proud of my collection of Pokemon cards. I had gained a few shinies over the last few months, and I enjoyed showing them off to other boys. Shiny cards came randomly in card packets our parents would buy for us. The card that I coveted the most was the Charizard card, And one morning, when my mother opened a packet for me and I looked through the new cards, there it was. It felt like the best day ever, and I was swelled with excitement. I jumped up and down all around the red house. And I couldn't wait to show it to James, who already had a Charizard himself. Through being friends with James Ellis and going to his house a lot, and we became acquainted with the Lemelson family, who were family friends of Kim and Irate. The Lemelson family is a very wealthy family who had been financially helping James's family for a while. Rob Lemelson is the son of Jerome Lemelson, the inventor of the barcode, and his net worth is in the hundreds of millions. And that's another thing that Elliot quite often does throughout his manifesto. He likes to name drop celebrities that he's met and other people worthy of note. Again, remember that this is all to be added to his overall attraction. I also strongly believe that due to the divorce between his mother and father, that he would have also likely been doted on even more so, as his relationship with his mother was far stronger, far more profound, far deeper with his mother than his father. The next flag, we start to look at his relationships in school. From the age of 9, he says this: I also started to examine myself and compare myself to these quote-unquote cool kids. I realized with some horror that I wasn't quote-unquote cool at all. I had a dorky hairstyle, I wore plain and uncool clothing, and I was shy and unpopular. I was always described as the shy boy in the past, but I never really thought my shyness would affect me in a negative way until this point. This revelation about the world and about myself really decreased my self-esteem. On top of this was the feeling that I was different because I am of mixed race. I am half white, half Asian, and this made me different from the normal fully white kids that I was trying to fit in with. Again, this is another kind of turning point for him. It starts to add up. The bands in his head start turning faster and faster. It's not that Elliot Rodger ever experienced racism. It's that the things that he wanted, to be the cool kid, to be the guy surrounded by blonde girls, as he would later develop that fetish. In his mind, he could not attain these things without being the very thing that he would eventually come to hate. The obnoxious brutes, as he would often refer to. So, if you were different to him, white, dressed differently, those were the things that he saw. He never really once considered that personality traits would be the main factor of why he couldn't be a social butterfly, why he was unable to attract females. That and the fact that he never actually approached a female ever. Now, between the ages of 9 and 13, Elliot describes this as the last period of contentment, but really there are several red flags during this period too. For example, his stepmother would actually use discipline, would hold his father to account for just simply doting on him, and he would develop a strong hatred of his stepmother during this period because of that. Because at the end of the day, Elliot had been given everything that he wanted by his father, and when home, Elliot got what he wanted. He was the king of his own personal castle. It was during this period that Elliot's father decided to move into a larger house, meaning that Elliot got his own room. A 6-bedroom house, and his own room having an ensuite bathroom and a personal balcony. So you can really get the idea of just how privileged he was. And as another example of just how much of a colossal sulk Elliot was, he did have his mind set on one of the bedrooms, but was denied that bedroom by his father and stepmother because they wanted that room to be given to his little sister Georgia. And he proceeded to throw a massive crying tantrum. And in the end, he did actually get given that room anyway. Now, it's throughout this period between the ages of 9 to 13, the so-called last years of contentment, that Elliot really starts to form his worldview about how social interactions work. His parents pushed him into playdates, and he developed fairly positive relationships with other boys. This would often involve a great deal of gaming. In fact, one of his friends, Connor, was actually incredibly rough and tumble with him, and Elliot describes him as a true bully and says that he later went on to hate him a great deal. But in all likelihood, he was probably just a rough and tumble kind of kid. And with Elliot being on the autistic spectrum, very likely misinterpreted what was actually just rough play. But a major red flag appears later in those years. Sumaya, that's his stepmother, told us extraordinary news. On one sunny afternoon at Father's, me and my sister were asked to come to the dining room for a special announcement. It wasn't announced by words, but by Sumaya indicating us to feel her stomach. She was pregnant. She and my father were having their first baby together. I was going to have a baby brother. Now, why is this a red flag? Well, you will see shortly. Now we come to the part of the video that is the true turning point in Elliot's life. And unironic trigger warning, this is about to get rather sexual in nature, as we're about to talk about Elliot's first experience with pornography and what this did to him and how this would corrupt his worldview. So you have been warned. This is from the age of 13 when Elliot first saw pornography. One time, whilst I was alone at Planet Cyber, I saw an older teenager watching pornography. I saw in detail a video of a man having sex with a hot girl. The video showed him stick his penis inside a girl's vagina. I didn't know anything about sex at the time. I barely even knew what sex was. I was slowly starting to develop sexual feelings for hot girls, but I didn't know what to do with them. To see this video really traumatized me. I had no idea what I was seeing. I couldn't imagine human beings doing such things with each other. The sight was shocking, traumatizing, and arousing. All of these feelings mixed together took a great toll on me. I walked home and cried by myself for a bit. I felt too guilty about what I saw to talk to my parents about it. I was quite shaken for a few days. This was among the very first glimpses I had of sex. Finding out about sex is one of the things that truly destroyed my entire life. Sex, the very word, fills me with hate. Once I hit puberty, I would always want it. Like any other boy, I would always hunger for it. I would always covet it. I would always fantasize about it. But I would never get it. Not getting any sex is what will shape the very foundation of my miserable youth. This was a very dark day. Finding out about sex was just the beginning of my horrific downfall. Now, as you can see, that is quite possibly one of the most bizarre things that you've ever had read to you. Most teenage boys, when they discover pornography for the first time, do not usually react like this, nor does it really affect them on some kind of deep, profound, dark level. Granted, I do understand that there are social studies that do outline that you can be too young to be exposed to this kind of thing, and yes, it can have a negative impact on your life, but this was incredibly deeply ingrained into Elliot. Like most incels, he believed he deserved it, that he should simply be given it, that he should be approached by the females he was attracted to, because he was God's gift to women, remember guys? But this was how Elliot's mind worked. It was not long after this period that his mother, biological mother, was able to move into a brand new apartment and acquire high-speed internet, meaning that Elliot was able to finally start playing World of Warcraft on her computer along with Halo 2. World of Warcraft in particular was his safety net. It was where he went to hide from the rest of the world. This is where he felt most comfortable. And it is something that is quite often brought up a lot. It's not that World of Warcraft or Halo radicalized him. It's just that he found solace in that game and several others. And when he was at home, that's what he did. It was the place that made him feel powerful. It was the place that made him feel empowered and strong and confident. In his own words, this would help him deal with loneliness. But it's not as if Elliot was ever truly lonely. His parents arranged many play dates for him. But for some reason, the parents didn't push hard enough for him to be able to interact with other children. didn't push hard enough for therapies and treatment, and didn't quite realize just how corrupted his worldview already was. The chapter Stuck in the Void, age 13 to 17, Elliot speaks about being bullied and describes himself as a loser and having negative interactions with other kids at high school. He says that he started to act weird on purpose because he needed to alleviate the boredom. He was an invisible kid. This made him bored and so would act weird and annoying just to gain any kind of attention. What Elliot didn't realize is that he already was a very socially awkward and very weird kid as it was anyway. It was during this entire period where the frequency of red flags really start to pop up. He started to develop hatred of girls because a pretty blonde girl teased him in high school. He threw a massive tantrum because he was forced to move bedroom because his stepmother was about to give birth to his baby brother. At this point, he's sacrificed a great deal of what social interactions he had to play World of Warcraft. He's obsessed with it at this point. At the age of 14, he speaks of being bullied. Some horrible 12th graders saw me as a target because I looked like a 10-year-old, and I was physically weak. They threw food at me during lunchtime and after school. It enraged me, but I was too scared to do anything about it. What kind of horrible, depraved people would poke fun at a boy younger than them who has just entered high school, I thought to myself. Because I failed to become good at skateboarding, I developed a hatred for the sport, and whenever someone called me a skateboarder, it reminded me of my failure and I got angry. The whole school started calling me it just to anger me, along with other insulting names. They teased me because I was scared of girls, calling me names like quote-unquote faggot. People also liked to steal my belongings and run away in an attempt to get me to chase after them, and I did chase after them in a furious rage, but I was so little and weak that they thought it was comical. I hated everyone at that school so much. And we get to the part where he talks about masturbation, so let's work our way through this, shall we? It was during this winter break that I experienced my first masturbation and ejaculation. It was one of the most peculiar and memorable experiences of my life. At this point, I was officially going through the stages of puberty, and I had lots of sexual urges. I often fantasized about hot naked girls whilst rubbing my penis against my mattress at night. One time, while doing this, I felt an intense stirring numbness all around my fully erect penis, and it extended all over my body. It felt magical and ecstatic, and I kept rubbing my penis on the mattress. That was when the orgasm happened. I couldn't believe how much pleasure I felt from that. I looked down at my penis to see that my semen had poured all over it, like a volcanic eruption of white sticky fluid. What was happening to me? I thought to myself with nervous excitement. It was like nothing I had ever seen or experienced before, something completely out of my world. I felt really guilty afterwards, so I refrained from telling anyone about it. I started to masturbate on a regular basis. At first, I only did it by rubbing my penis on my bed, but it eventually escalated to looking at pictures of girls online while rubbing my penis against my pants, fantasizing about doing sexual things with them. I didn't know how to access any porn sites, so I would just browse regular websites until I found a picture of a hot girl to masturbate to. I developed a very high sex drive, and it would always remain like this. This was the start of hell for me. Going through puberty utterly doomed my existence. It condemned me to live a life of suffering and unfulfilled desires, even at that young age. I felt depressed because I wanted sex, yet I felt unworthy of it. I didn't think I was ever going to experience sex in reality, and I was right, I never did. I was finally interested in girls, but there was no way I could ever get them. And so my starvation began. Just for a second, can we just really highlight that last sentence there? Sexual starvation. Sexual starvation. At the age of 14. Really does make you think, doesn't it? The boys in my grade talked about sex a lot. Some of them even told me they had had sex with their girlfriends. This was the most devastating and traumatizing thing I had ever heard in my life. Again, Elliot really just showing just how privileged his life was, how utterly devoid of struggle it really was. Boys having sex at my age of 14, I couldn't fathom it. How is it that they were able to have such intimate and pleasurable experiences with girls while I could only fantasize about it? I frequently started asking myself. This was an all-boys school. How in the hell were those boys even able to meet girls to have sex with? I wondered. I hoped they were lying. I hoped against all hope, hearing that really shook me to my core. Words cannot describe how much hatred and envy I felt for those boys. That hatred would only fester the more I suffer from my sexual starvation. I was too scared to tell anyone about it, and I hid it well for a time. And so the jealousy continued. 15 years old. Yes, he had girls with him, pretty girls, but they didn't seem to mind that he was such an evil bastard. In fact, I bet they liked him for it. This is how girls are, and I was starting to realize it. This was what truly opened my eyes to how brutal the world is. The most meanest and depraved of men come out on top, and women flock to these men. Their evil acts are rewarded by women, while the good, decent men are laughed at. It is sick, twisted, and wrong in every way. I hated the girls even more than the bullies because of this. The sheer cruelty of the world around me was so intense that I will never recover from the mental scars. Any experience I ever had before never traumatized me as much as this. So, Elliot is now 15 years old, and every new experience is now the most traumatizing experience that he's ever had to deal with. Every happy couple, every experience that he desired that was being had by somebody else, whether it was a friend or a bully or a girl that he found attractive, because they were having these things and he wasn't, because everyone else in his mind was experiencing the things that he wanted, that he coveted so highly, that he held in such high regard, he developed intense hatred and his own justifications for that level of hatred. This is where the true misogyny would begin. This is when the dark and almost evil, cruel plans would start to fester, the fantasies in his mind. If a female wasn't attracted to Elliot, then there was something wrong with them, not him. There is an example of just how self-serving, how utterly selfish and self-aggrandizing Elliot was later on at the age of 15 that I think is worth bringing up. There was a moment at a swimming pool where his younger brother was drowning, and Elliot, like the good brother that he was, saved him. And he says this: "Every single second of my brother's life, everything that happens to him in the future will exist because I pulled him out of the water that day." Now, usually when you save a family member or a friend from life-threatening circumstances, you don't self-aggrandize. You don't need to feel the need to stand up and take credit for it. He projected that hero complex onto himself. At the age of 16 is when Elliot developed his focused attraction to blonde females. During my masturbation sessions, I often built elaborate fantasies in my mind that I had a hot blonde-haired girlfriend to have passionate sex with, almost like having an imaginary girlfriend. I told no one about this. In fact, I didn't talk to my parents at all about my sexual development. I felt too guilty and embarrassed about it. Whenever they probed me, I lied to them, telling them that I had no sex drive. And this alone really drives home the level of guilt that Elliot felt towards himself. And despite all of the self-aggrandizing, the incredibly high opinion of himself, he still did have an element of absolute self-hatred, and did not believe that he actually deserved to have that kind of relationship with somebody else. And so he felt massive guilt for it. The next major red flag is when his younger brother, Leo, is shown to have a better social life, and the incredible jealousy that Elliot feels here is truly astounding. Not only does Leo have a better social life, but now he was making out with girls at age 12. They made out for a long time, and I could see them tongue kiss. They knew I was watching with envy, and they still did it. I bet that lucky bastard took great satisfaction from my envy. There I was, watching a boy 4 years younger than me experience everything I had longed for. To kiss a girl, to be worthy of a girl's attraction. On that day, I developed a vicious hatred for Leo that will never go away. This is the kind of mind that Elliot had. If somebody had something that he couldn't acquire or didn't possess, he developed extreme hatred for them. And despite the self-hatred, at the age of 17, he again proceeds to look at himself as a god-like figure. I was always depressed and bored for the few hours a day I had to spend there, and I disliked all of the degenerate low-class students there. They repulsed me. I wanted to get out of there as fast as I could, and it became my goal for the year. At the end of the school time, every day I asked my teachers to give me extra homework assignments, and I stopped myself from playing World of Warcraft until I completed them. At the age of 17 is the major turning point for Elliot. At this point, he's viewing everyone around him as his enemy. He's developing hatred for more and more people on a daily basis, including his own family members. He's seeing forums of girls talking about sex. He feels like crap because he isn't getting any. He feels condemned to a life of celibacy, whilst other boys of his age are getting laid. He feels inferior, undesirable, but simultaneously better than everybody else. And he goes on to say this: I formed an ideology in my head of how the world should work. I was fueled both by my desire to destroy all of the injustices of the world and to exact revenge on everyone I envy and hate. I decided that my destiny in life is to rise to power, so I can impose my ideology on the world and set everything right. I became a new person, furiously driven by a goal. My torment would continue, but I had something to live for. I felt empowered. It was during this period when he began spying on couples, seething with hatred, as is shown in some of his old YouTube videos, which we'll be looking at in a bit. His fantasies started becoming more than extreme. I began to have fantasies of becoming very powerful and stopping everyone from having sex. I wanted to take their sex away from them, just like how they took it away from me. I saw sex as an evil and barbaric act, all because I was unable to have it. This was the major turning point. The anger made me stronger inside. This was when I formed my ideas that sex should be outlawed. It is the only way to make the world a fair and just place. If I can't have it, I will destroy it. That's the conclusion I came to, right then and there. My hatred for people who have sex festered inside me like a plague. I frequently went on walks around town to brood over how hopeless and unfair everything was. It was better than being stuck in my room all the time. When I saw young couples walking around at the mall, my anger and hatred intensified greatly. It was the worst torture ever to see them making out and being intimate. My life, if you can call it a life, was living hell. It was at this point that his stepmother and father did actually begin to see just how bad things were getting with Elliot, and they did try to send him to Morocco to sort his head out. This naturally devastated Elliot and fueled his hatred of his stepmother even more. He even tried to escape his own home prior to being taken to Morocco, and it was around this point when he started to develop massive distaste for his own father too. My father never made any effort to prepare me for facing such a cruel world. He never taught me how to attract girls. He never warned me that if I didn't attract girls at an early age, my life would fall into a miserable pit of despair. Again, how could he be so blind? I asked myself constantly. Except for I have to ask, how could he be so blind to the seething, growing, festering ball of absolute immature hatred, edgy, immature hatred that Elliot would become. He sees the world as this torture pit for him because everybody else is happy. Everyone else is having relationships and they're having the things that he can't have. Sex, intimacy, because that's how shallow and how just he is. He is incredibly immature. He sees everything on a surface level and never truly ever understood the meaning of any of it. Unfortunately, Elliot did manage to weasel his way back to America. At the age of 18, things came to a head between Elliot and Sumaya, his stepmother. Sumaya returned from Morocco and she was very angry with me due to the way I acted while I was there. She effectively kicked me out of father's house, and because I was 18, she was allowed to. Father didn't do anything to stop her, being the weak man that he is. This is how it has always been. Father has always given Sumaya free rein to impose her rules on the household. He gave her all of this power. The act officially ended the one week arrangement, and mother's house became my permanent living space. Not only did she kick me out of father's house, but she forbade me to go there even for a short visit. And still, father didn't do anything about it. Father kept saying that the house is her house as much as his, and that she has the right to kick me out. No, I am the eldest son. The house should be my house before hers. This caused any respect I still had for my father to fade away completely. It was such a betrayal to put his second wife before his eldest son. What kind of father would do that? The bitch must be really good to him in bed, I figured. What a weak man. And Elliot there quite clearly not realizing that his own mind was incredibly weak and shallow by making such a comment. He would be allowed to go back to Sumaya's house several months later as things calmed down. Months later, another example of Elliot's external self-deprecation, if you will, from a third-person perspective. The world still viewed me as a weak and undesirable loser, even though I changed my wardrobe and started working out. What was the point anymore? I asked myself. I couldn't help but feel anger and hatred. Life was too unfair to me. Huge portions of his manifesto is a great deal of whinging. It's a great deal of, I hate this person, I hate that person, life is unfair, life is unfair. I did this to try to rectify this problem, or I was owed this because I am my father's son. At the age of 19, Elliot writes something that is incredibly deep, profound, intense, something that you'd only really expect to hear from a civil rights movement leader, or a politician trying to make genuine positive change. Let me read this to you. To be angry about the injustices one faces is a sign of strength. It is a sign that one has the will to fight back against those injustices, rather than bowing down and accepting it as fate. Both my friends James and Philip seem to be the weak accepting type, whereas I am the fighter. I will never stand to be insulted, and I will eventually have my revenge against all those who insult me, no matter how long it takes. The first sentence of that is incredibly powerful, but just bear in mind, he's not talking about equal rights for men and women or the races. He's not talking about injustice in the courts. He's talking about having sex. Being owed sex. That's what he's talking about. That's the injustice in his life. Let that sink in. Any threats to his ego meant that he would develop a level of distaste or stronger feelings of hatred towards people. He does mention a karate class that he took, and he didn't like the fact that there was a younger, more experienced kid there that was actually further ahead in the color belts that you go on to earn through karate. At the age of 19 is the first time that he's really openly and able to articulate to what he would eventually lose was a friend of his, James, how he actually felt about things. After our karate session, when me and James went to a restaurant in Palisades to have dinner, I sometimes got very angry when I saw a group of teenagers or a teenage couple. I constantly talked to James with vehement rage about my envy and anger of such people. I told him about how I wished I could make them all suffer. We had a lot of conversations about what we would do if we had all the power in the world, and I told him about all of the torturous acts of revenge I would carry out against those who have insulted me or lived a better life than me. I thought that James would relate to me, since he was also a virgin who had no girls in his life, but some of the things I said began to disturb him. One night he told me with a lot of distress that enough was enough, and so Elliot's hatred and ridiculous immature virgin rage pushed away one of his last remaining friends. And finally we come to Santa Barbara Endgame, age 19 to 22, and this is when the overt racism starts to appear. My first week turned out to be very unpleasant, leaving a horrific first impression of my new life in Santa Barbara. My two housemates were very nice, but they kept inviting over this friend of theirs named Chance. He was Black Boy, who came over all the time, and I hated this cocksure attitude. Inevitably, a vile incident occurred between me and him. I was eating a meal in the kitchen when he came over and started bragging to my housemates about his success with girls. I couldn't stand it, so I proceeded to ask them all if they were virgins. They all looked at me weirdly and said they had lost their virginity long ago. I felt so inferior, as it reminded me of how much I have missed out in life. And then this black boy named Chance said that he lost his virginity when he was only 13. In addition, he said that the girl he lost his virginity to was a blonde white girl. I was so enraged that I almost splashed him with my orange juice. I indignantly told him that I did not believe him, and then went to my room to cry. I cried and cried and cried, and then I called my mother and cried to her on the phone. How could an inferior, ugly black boy be able to get a white girl and not me? I am beautiful, and I am half white myself. I am descended from British aristocracy. He is descended from slaves. I deserve it more. I tried to not believe his foul words, but they were already said, and it was hard to erase from my mind. If this is actually true, if this ugly black filth was able to have sex with a blonde white girl at the age of 13 while I've had to suffer virginity all of my life, then this just proves how ridiculous the female gender is. They would give themselves to this filthy scum, but they would reject me. The injustice. Females truly have something mentally wrong with them. Their minds are flawed, and at this point in my life I was beginning to see it. The more I explored my college town of Isla Vista, the more ridiculousness I witnessed. All of the hot, beautiful girls walked around with obnoxious, tough, jock-type men who partied all the time and acted crazy. They should be going for intelligent gentlemen, such as myself. Women who are sexually attracted to the wrong type of man. This is a major flaw in the very foundation of humanity. It is completely and utterly wrong, in every sense of the word. As these truths fully dawned on me, I became deeply disturbed by them, deeply disturbed, offended, and traumatized. And those two roommates moved out within a week. And so the manifesto goes on, and yes, of course, we are going to skip quite a portion of it, because again, there are aspects to Elliot's life that he just keeps repeating over and over again. Witnessing couples, witnessing people experiencing things that he hadn't, and him developing anger, hatred, and then crying. It was during these last couple of years that Elliot had decided that enough was enough and that he would enact revenge. But in order to do that, he had to get some practice in. He had to learn about firearms. At the age of 21, he says, I had to wait a few hours for them to prepare the laptop for me, and while I waited, I decided to go to the shooting range in Oxnard. I had the knowledge in the back of my mind that the day of retribution was very possible now. Going to the shooting range while I waited for my laptop gave me the perfect opportunity to gain initial training in shooting guns, which will be the main weapons I use as vengeance against my enemies when the day of retribution ultimately comes to pass. Just bearing in mind, he no longer has much in the way of negative opinions about himself. This is why he refers to himself now as the perfect gentleman and is a beautiful, attractive young man who puts in huge amounts of effort. He drinks vanilla lattes and drives a black BMW. There's no reason why women couldn't possibly want to approach him. And he says, I had nothing left to live for but revenge. Women must be punished for their crimes of rejecting such a magnificent gentleman as myself. All of those popular boys must be punished for enjoying heavenly lives and having sex with all the girls while I had to suffer in lonely virginity. As time goes on, his jealousy and anger converts to true hatred, even racism. The sight of that filled me with rage. I always felt as if white girls thought less of me because I was half Asian, but then I see this white girl at the party talking to a full-blooded Asian. I never had that kind of attention from a white girl, and white girls are the only girls I'm attracted to, especially the blondes. How could an ugly Asian attract the attention of a white girl, while a beautiful Eurasian like myself never had any attention from them? Elliot there, not realizing he just answered his own question by suggesting that he himself has a specific type, not realizing that other people have specific types. And we come to the final stage of his life, when he'd had enough of allegedly being bullied and pushed around and had to suffer the indignance of cruel women. Only now I was ready and capable of fighting back against the cruelty of women. But when I was a weak and timid boy at Taft High School, I was powerless and frightened, having to resort to hiding in a life of playing video games. All of the suffering, loneliness, rejection, and humiliation I had to experience since then had strengthened me. The hatred that festered inside me in all of those years leading up to this point had empowered me in a dark, twisted way. I was now armed with weapons, possessed great intelligence and philosophical insight, with the willpower to exact the most catastrophic act of vengeance the world will ever see. I would definitely make sure to target the people who lived in that house I was attacked in. The plan was to destroy the entirety of Isla Vista and kill every single person in it, or at least kill as many popular young people I could before the police arrive, and I'd have to kill myself. He's referring to an incident that happened a while back wherein he'd gotten drunk and tried to push a couple of girls off a pier, but had to be pushed back and ended up breaking his ankle in the process. And the penultimate red flag, probably one of the more telling red flags out of all of this, when he's speaking about his brother. That was the day I decided I would have to kill him on the day of Retribution. I will not allow the boy to surpass me at everything, to live the life I've always wanted. It's not fair that he has the chance to have a pleasurable life while I've been denied it. It would be a hard thing to do, because I had really bonded with my little brother in the last year, and he respected and looked up to me. But I would have to do it. If I can't live a pleasurable life, then neither will he. I will not let him put my legacy to shame. In order to kill Jazz, I would have to kill Sumaya too, but that will be easy. All I would need to do is think about all of the hurtful things she had said to me in that past as I plunge my knife into her neck. It's because his brother lost his virginity and he hadn't. The next massive obvious red flag is the plan, what he planned to do on that day. But I'm not going to read that to you. Instead, I will summarize it to you instead. Now, the sorority Alpha Phi or Alpha Phi, I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce that, so my apologies. That was the sorority house that was filled with what Elliot saw as the most beautiful women. And it would have been filled most likely with blonde females that he found very attractive. The first stage of his plan would involve killing his roommates, and they were the first people that he killed along with a friend. He describes torturing them. He describes skinning them alive, pouring boiling hot water over them, and so on. His second phase was to enact his war on women. He would go to the hottest sorority of his college and kill everyone inside there. He even describes stalking the members of Alpha Phi repeatedly prior to writing this. He would kill everyone inside and set the whole house on fire. And his final phase, the day of Retribution, would be a showdown in the streets of Isla Vista. The day before, he would go to his father's house, kill his little brother, denying him the chance to surpass him along with his stepmother, and that the final part of his plan would be to steal one of his father's vehicles, probably an SUV, and head down to Del Playa Street, and he would proceed to then dump a bag with severed heads inside onto the street, proclaiming to everyone how he made them all suffer, and that he planned to take a concoction of Xanax and Vicodin pills to kill himself using liquor, and if that didn't work, he would then use a gun. And although I did mark several areas of the manifesto, the last bits, I just want to read the last one to you, to kind of drive all of this home. All I ever wanted was to love women, and in turn to be loved by them back. Their behavior towards me has only earned my hatred, and rightfully so. I am the true victim in all this. I am the good guy. Humanity struck at me first by condemning me to experience so much suffering. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. I didn't start this war. I wasn't the one who struck first, but I will finish it by striking back. I will punish everyone, and it will be beautiful. Finally, at long last, I can show the world my true worth. I imagine that if Elliot had got to see the news headlines the following day after his disgusting attack on a group of innocent people, that he would not have been very happy with the headline. After all, he is now known as the Virgin Killer. Personally, I prefer to refer to him as the non-neckbeard incel loser, who actually failed to carry out his plan, and in so took the lives of 6 young, innocent lives, injuring a further 14. Now, I'm not saying that all people with autism who have happened to be doted on so very heavily from their parents would all go on to commit such atrocities. But I can't help but think that these were the 2 major factors in his life that contributed to what he became. His manifesto and YouTube video went up the night before the attacks, and 6 days prior, he had actually had a welfare check carried out on him. And if the police had known that he was a very, very good liar, they would have found his apartment filled to the brim full of guns and knives. But no, Elliot is not a victim here, and I do not sympathize or empathize with him whatsoever. His feelings, his ideology, his utter immature, disgusting hatred would have fostered not just simply by him, but he would have, whilst posting on various forums, been reinforced by other people. Now, obviously, not all incels are like him. They're not all like him. If you go onto incel websites, incel forums, you'll see that, yes, there are going to be people that regard him as a hero. He also inspired other incels to go on and do horrific things. But there are incels out there that despise him, that hate his guts for bringing such a negative image to them and obviously killing people, innocent people. But before we conclude this segment of the video, I really want to ask you a question that my friend Miki, who helped me flag various parts of the manifesto, that she asked me, and I wanted to ask you. How would you feel if your son, if your daughter, if your brother, sister, whoever, somebody that you knew, how would you feel if they sent that manifesto to you? Because that manifesto is a suicide note, ultimately, with some of the most deranged, dark, horrendous things that you would ever likely have to read, written by a family or friend. How would you feel if you received that? I'd be pretty interested to hear your comments down below on that. So we've come to the part of the video where I really just want to just play some of the videos for you that built up in his remaining few years, the videos that were uploaded to his YouTube channel. And I'd like to play a couple of snippets of the first couple, and then I will play the main Retribution video in full, just to really drive home the kind of character that Elliot Rodger was.
Hey, Elliot Rodger here. I'm up in the hills in Montecito right now. It's truly a beautiful day. But, as I've always said, a beautiful environment is the darkest hell if you have to experience it all alone. And sadly, I've been alone for a very long time. I've been attending college in Santa Barbara for about 2.5 years now. And in those 2.5 years, I've experienced nothing but loneliness and misery. And my problem is girls. There are so many beautiful girls here, but none of them give me a chance, and I don't know why. I don't know why you girls are so repulsed by me. It doesn't make sense. I do everything I can to appear attractive to you. I dress nice. I'm sophisticated. I'm magnificent. I have a nice car, a BMW. Well, it's nicer than 90% of the people in my college. I'm 22 years old, and I've never had a girlfriend. I'm still a virgin. I've never had the pleasure of having sex with a girl, sleeping with a girl, kissing a girl. I've never even held a girl's hand. Hell, I don't even have a young girl's phone number in my cell phone. And that's just such an injustice, because I'm so magnificent. I deserve girls much more than all those slobs I see at my college who are somehow able to walk around with beautiful girls. I mean, even in the college town that I stay in during my semesters, as I walk around like the common areas of those towns, or the areas where all the college parties happen, I see these obnoxious guys walking with beautiful girls. And that pisses me off, because I should be the one with the girls. Hey, Elliot Rodger here. I'm just sitting in my car right now, enjoying the view of the beach. And my view has been ruined by this sight right here. In front of me, sitting right there on that bench, is a young couple, I presume about my age. I was enjoying such a nice view until they came and sat down and started kissing. This is the reason why life isn't fair. Why does that guy get to have such a beautiful girlfriend while I'm all alone? Why? Whenever I drive through this college town called Isla Vista, which is just right next to UCSB, I see so many hot, beautiful blonde girls walking with absolute stupid, obnoxious-looking douchebags. And I just can't help but think how wrong that is. Those beautiful blonde girls should be walking with me, not those brutes. I deserve them more. Why do those horrible men get to experience the love and affection of such beautiful, heavenly girls? Hi, Elliot Rodger here. Well, this is my last video. It all has to come to this. Tomorrow is the day of Retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity, against all of you. For the last 8 years of my life, ever since I've hit puberty, I've been forced to endure an existence of loneliness, rejection, and unfulfilled desires, all because girls have never been attracted to me. Girls gave their affection and sex and love to other men, but never to me. I'm 22 years old and I'm still a virgin. I've never even kissed a girl. I've been through college for 2.5 years, more than that actually, and I'm still a virgin. It has been very torturous. College is the time when everyone experiences those things such as sex and fun and pleasure. But in those years I've had to rot in loneliness. It's not fair. You girls have never been attracted to me. I don't know why you girls aren't attracted to me, but I will punish you all for it. It's an injustice, a crime, because I don't know what you don't see in me. I'm the perfect guy. And yet you throw yourselves at all these obnoxious men, instead of me, the supreme gentleman. I will punish all of you for it. On the day of Retribution, I am going to enter the hottest sorority house of UCSB. And I will slaughter every single spoiled, stuck-up, blonde slut I see inside there. All those girls that I've desired so much, they would have all rejected me and looked down upon me as an inferior man if I ever made a sexual advance towards them, while they throw themselves at these obnoxious brutes. I'll take great pleasure in slaughtering all of you. You will finally see that I am, in truth, the superior one, the true alpha male. Yes. After I've annihilated every single girl in the sorority house, I'll take to the streets of Isla Vista and slay every single person I see there. All those popular kids who live such lives of hedonistic pleasure while I've had to rot in loneliness for all these years. They've all looked down upon me every time I tried to go out and join them. They've all treated me like a mouse. Well, now, I will be a god compared to you. You will all be animals. You are animals, and I will slaughter you like animals. I'll be a god, exacting my retribution on all those who deserve it. And you do deserve it, just for the crime of living a better life than me. All you popular kids, you've never accepted me, and now you'll all pay for it. And girls, all I've ever wanted was to love you and to be loved by you. I've wanted a girlfriend. I've wanted sex. I've wanted love, affection, adoration. But you think I'm unworthy of it. That's a crime that can never be forgiven. If I can't have you, girls, I will destroy you. You denied me a happy life, and in turn, I will deny all of you life. It's only fair. I hate all of you. Humanity is a disgusting, wretched, depraved species. If I had it in my power, I would stop at nothing to reduce every single one of you to mountains of skulls and rivers of blood. And rightfully so. You deserve to be annihilated. And I'll give that to you. You never showed me any mercy, and so I will show you none. You forced me to suffer all my life, and now I'll make you all suffer. I've waited a long time for this. I'll give you exactly what you deserve, all of you. All you girls who rejected me and looked down upon me and, treated me like scum while you gave yourselves to other men. And all of you men for living a better life than me. All of you sexually active men. I hate you. I hate all of you. I can't wait to give you exactly what you deserve. Utter annihilation.
Elliot Rodgers is a bit different to other incels. Most incels, at least from what I've been able to deduce, is born from a position of political awakening. We call this red pilling. The state of black pilling is becoming so distraught and just so done with life that you become black pilled, a state of depression where you think nothing will ever change. If you go onto incel websites, you will see this kind of attitude. If you watch my Twitch streams, you would have seen me have a look through what's called the Incel Constitution, in which incels try to write out a method of dealing with their virginity. There is a great deal of victimhood here. There is a great deal of no real attempts at trying to improve oneself. Much like Elliot, they feel owed, they feel entitled to sex. Some of them even suggest having prostitution as a form of welfare given to them by the state. Elliot was different. He didn't have an overarching ideology. For him, it wasn't deep. For him, everything was superficial. For the way that he looked, for the things that he owned. Because he'd been given everything that he ever wanted, he felt that he was owed everything. And what he saw in others who were successful men, he tried to project onto himself. But he didn't realize that you actually need to go and have conversations with people. Elliot never approached a female in an attempt to ask her out. Never once did he ever accept the fact that he might be a bit weird and a bit socially awkward. Being on the spectrum myself, having ADHD, because ADHD is on the spectrum, I understand what it is to be socially awkward. And for him, this would have been obsessive. And great failures were made in not recognizing a lot of these red flags and issues that were coming up. The fact that he coveted sex as much as he did. As one thing you will see with incels is they're not after relationships. They are suffering from sexual starvation. That's their thing. They have a very narrow, very immature worldview. But their plight isn't born of the same thing as Elliot Rodger. In fact, some incels don't even recognize Elliot to be an incel himself. Some people like to refer to him as a racial purist or a Nazi. And to be fair, he did take some of the ideology from Mein Kampf and some of the other Nazi ideology, not because he was a racial purist, not because he wanted to wipe out degenerates or undesirables, but because he wanted to put women in camps, because that's what he took Nazi ideology, cherry-picked from it, and then corrupted it in his own personal little virgin way, and then wanted that to be his thing. He was so far gone by the age of 17 that honestly, any kind of deprogramming, any kind of de-radicalization would have taken years. And in fact, in my opinion, even if Elliot had managed to pop his cherry, I truly believe that he wouldn't have gone on to do a mass shooting, but he would have gone on to become a sexually motivated serial killer. But that's just my opinion, of course. Now, the penultimate part of this video, I find both extremely disturbing and almost just. Like Ted Bundy, like various other serial killers, in the current year, there are some people out there that have such extreme daddy issues that they begin to stan. They stan for these people. They are massively attracted to them and they think they're wonderful. And unfortunately, there are some stans out there. There are some people who wear Elliot's face on t-shirts. There's even a lady who has a Elliot Rodger tattoo. The tragic tale of Elliot Rodger is one that we could all really learn from. The style of parenting. I understand wanting to give your child everything that you didn't. But in doing so, in setting no boundaries, that child will grow up and suffer greatly because they will step out into the real world and people in the real world will not give in to them. This will have a massively negative effect. We know this from psychology that this can cause great depression. This can cause issues with holding jobs down and having relationships. Now you combine that with one of the autistic spectrum disorders, where everything is amplified, every emotion is amplified, every obsession, everything that you like and actually spend time doing is an obsession that you love to do repetitively. Everything is so much more worse in the mind of someone who has one of the autistic spectrum disorders. Elliot Rodger was simply an elastic band being wrapped around a little stick over and over and over and over and over, and it went on for years and years and years until he finally and completely snapped. Do I believe that he was legitimately racist? He said pretty bad things. He said pretty racist things. But in my mind, in order to actually be racist, you need to understand what racism actually is. I had this discussion on Twitter. He said horrible things about black people, about fully blood Asian people, but really, these things were very superficial, very on the surface, no ideology, no political argument there. I could be wrong, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. He definitely hated women, 100%, but again, very superficial thing. He never learned to socialize, never learned to interact with other human beings properly, but he lived an incredibly privileged life and still had the gall and the audacity to sit there and say how unfair life is. If you do go and read his manifesto, whenever he does happen to refer to people that are worse off than he is, he often refers to them as degenerates or low-class filth, because he truly thought that he was king of the castle. some time in some actual poverty may have done that boy some good. But to play out this video, I'm not going to say any more. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Alex of Irate Alex. This has been True IRL, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.